Hello everyone, it's been a while since a mod review, but a mod recently dropped on the workshop which presents a paradox of a character. Leofric's character was introduced in a novel way back in the day by Graham McNeil, which kinda doesn't remain in canon, but maybe does due to multiverse, considering that this character ended up killing a Jade Dragon in Grand Cafe, which may or may not be Yuan Bo. Guardians of the Forest does have a lot of timey-wimey stuff, honestly, but it's cool to see this character introduced as a playable mod for a unique Bretonnian experience. So you can see starting army, there's quite a lot of new units, and there's quite a lot of different units available. Let's jump into the faction effects. Improved sea navigation. Casualty replenishment of pilgrim and artillery units is not affected by peasant economy. Leofric and the Pathmaker Lords have access to specific horde buildings. Treasure tent. Relics can be acquired with chivalry through the technology panel, which grant powerful bonuses, and protection of the forest has access to some wood elf units in recruitment and also the deep woods teleportation. For lord effects, we have the following: unique horde buildings, because this is a legendary character, armor plus 30 for pilgrim units in rank 7 and above for lord's army, and plus 15 reload time reduction for artillery units in rank 7 and above for lord's army. This does mean that you're going to be using quite a decent amount of artillery, which is very strange for Bretonnia, but also makes sense when you go into older Bretonnian lore. You'll need Immortal Empires Expanded for this mod, which is fair enough, considering that Immortal Empires Expanded is probably the best way to play Warhammer 3. So you'll start off in Eastern Koresh fighting against a Skaven faction, a Dark Elf faction, and a Beastmen faction. You're going to be stuck there getting into a lot of warfare. That's kind of expected, and don't you worry, you do have the tools of war. So your character is going to have quite a decent amount of unique skills, focusing around making his army a little bit better, but also making him very good at taking out large monsters. Overall, he can do quite a lot of damage, and you can get a decent amount of movement back after you get a certain skill to keep on that progression. The fact is that this faction is going to focus around being quite mobile. If you so want it, you can ignore that, by the way, it's perfectly fine. But this is in fact a horde character with pretty much all the roster available to you from there, alongside all the brand new units and a unique building, which is going to give you army abilities to first your character and then later on to separate armies if you so wish to have them. Again, just to stress, because I know some people don't like the horde mechanic, you can totally ignore this, but when it comes to a mobile army, it does really help, especially if you're going to try and be as aggressive as possible, and you do have a lot of land to cover. Access to the Deep Woods mechanic will allow you to move around through the Warhammer world without really too much of a problem, and thankfully there's a set of trees right there, so you can really get there early on into your campaign if you decide not to build in Koresh and you want to go somewhere different. This is further enhanced with the fact that you can easily purge cities if you don't want to keep them, which will give you some horde growth, it will give you replenishment, and also give you back a little bit of movement, which is fantastic because that means that you can camp up and just replenish or recruit some more troops if you so need it. Purging also complements the fact that you can get special items from your tech tree. It's a special section down there called relics, and that's going to be focused around you, well, getting into combat. Purging is probably going to be the fastest way for you to get these bonuses, but it completely depends on how you're going to play your campaign, whether or not you're going to get these relatively early or later down the line. And don't worry, you're not going to be using the chivalry for stuff like the Green Knights, because that's not available to you. It's definitely going to be a very different campaign for Bretonnia that you're normally used to, but in most cases people have been using Bretonnia with a lot of mods, so it might feel quite normal. Your start of your campaign is going to focus around just dealing with some early Skaven and some Dark Elves. Whether or not you decide to stay there is completely up to you, which I really like. That type of option when it comes to a brand new campaign is always really fun. You're of course supported with a bunch of heroes and a Lord option to use on the battlefield if you don't want to just use the generic Bretonnians. The first one is the Scholar, which is a crossbow wielding engineer type. He's there to do a decent amount of damage actually. You can boost him up for his crossbow to be quite fast, and really he's there to give you a little bit of restock, which is always wonderful. There's a lot of factions right now in Warhammer 3 Vanilla which is just missing a restock option, and it's kind of sad because they're actually quite good. This you're going to start off with at the start of your campaign, but you can recruit more of them with relative ease, which is always good because you're going to be fielding quite a decent amount of range units. This is going to be a very different Bretonnia campaign to what you're normally used to. this is then further pushed with other types of units. So you do have access to the Warden, which is probably the best hybrid in that sense. You've got access to a lot of different attacks. You've got ranged weapons, you've got the Law of Life, you've also got some of the dancers. Essentially a peak hero type, which is kind of cool if you want to just tailor it around. You're not going to be able to get every single spell, so you can kind of build it up as you go there. And obviously some do lock out depending on what you do pick. Big fan. Obviously, going with the Wood Elves were very involved with this character way back in the day. Honestly, I'm kind of wanting to find through my books and see if I can reread Guardians of the Forest again, because it was a decent book. One of Graham McNeil's, kind of weird ones. Again, mostly weird because it's a paradox now. To further push up the roster, this mod has decided to introduce a bunch of Nipponese units, which does mean that there is a Nippon-based hero known as the Ronin, and the idea here is this is a fighter, which is also going to boost up your Nippon-based warriors. It's kind of cool. They have a great sword there. You've also got access to giving them Vanguard deployment. It's really funny in a way because we haven't had full Nippon for a modded faction just yet, but a lot of people are making Nipponese units to kind of bring them in and do some damage, which is great. Little by little, we're seeing more of that, and who knows what's to come in the future, right? But you do have another Lord option, which is that of the Pathmaker, and this is kind of like a little bit of a Hermit Knight in a sense. So you are able to get all the bonuses that you can expect. This is very much in the style of maybe a warrior priest with its own kind of passives and abilities. It works out quite well because it's very different to what you're normally used to. Melee fighter, defensive too, not very heavily armored, but that's kind of expected given the equipment. And right now I do want to mention that yes, your lords and stuff do have vows, so don't forget your vows or else you're going to have very expensive knights. Because you do start off with a unit of questing knights, which are horrendously expensive. It's something that is I think it's about 800 upkeep per turn or something. Makes sense because obviously they're very, very good units, but it does hit your coffers quite hard if you're going to start wanting to build up an empire. But yeah, the Pathmaker is, as you can tell, a Horde Lord with a decent amount of upkeep reduction too, so you're going to get quite a lot of cheap units out in the field, which a lot of the units that you have access to aren't really too expensive, so you're going to have a few free armies if you know how to kind of stack up certain bonuses in game. But back after getting rudely interrupted, so some of you might be wondering about empire building. That's perfectly fine. I will say the very expensive questing knights will make that a little bit of a problem early on, but if you get rid of them, if you're comfortable enough, obviously, because remember those are very, very good horsemen, you should have no problem, or if you start purging. I think the best way to go about this is actually doing a little bit of purging and a little bit of colonizing, going from there. The roster additions are pretty cool. It's a bit of a healthy mix. You start off with a lot of different pilgrim types, so you've got different weapon options, meaning that you can make more use of them rather than relying on a lot of peasants if you don't want to deal with a lot of horsemen. There's also a fair amount of Wood Elf units. I'm just not showing them on screen because, I mean, you know, they're from the base DLC, so you're already kind of used to that. But you do have a lot of Nipponese units, and that just adds a little bit of different flavor to it. God, I'm hoping that we get a Nippon faction mod at some point, but the little bits here and there are always really cool. What really makes this faction very different, however, is the fact that you've got access to a decent amount of artillery. You've got the battle towers, one of them being just shooting, the other one being a catapult. Then you've got obviously some scorpions, ballistas, and some basic catapults. It adds to a style for Bretonnia that's very, very different. They don't have a lot of range compared to other factions, obviously your trebuchet, but the idea here is being able to really overwhelm your enemy with a bunch of different firepower. The scorpions being very useful because you do have the different types of shots. It's not just the single shot, but you do have it like the dark elves, so you can deal with hordes, and that's always incredibly useful. I like what I've seen. Honestly, it's very, very different. I think the battle towers, well, war castles are probably the best thing about this. I think Dead Baron made these a very, very cool style. It's basically just like a moving siege tower, which are very durable and obviously can take a decent amount of a punch whilst also dealing a punch there. very useful when you're being swarmed by loads and loads of Skaven. I played with this faction for a decent amount of time yesterday, as I had been feeling a bit of an itch to play some Bretonnia. So yeah, I was pretty surprised when this mod came up on my recommendations feed, and not only that, but it's a mod based on a very strange book at that when you look at it now through post-Old World and obviously Warhammer 3 content lore. Is definitely one that you need to check out if you want to play a little bit of Bretonnia, but you want something a little bit different, because right now all the free Bretonnian factions play exactly the same, and who knows when we're going to see a change at that. Alongside the fact that, we're still in a bit of a drought. We do need some stuff coming forward. And we should always be quite thankful that, we do have a bustling modding community. Combat-wise, it's going to be very different. As you might have noticed, I'm actually kind of holding down quite a bit just to make sure that I can fire and I can hit them with range. It's so very different from a normal Bretonnian playthrough. The Scorpions themselves, not a lot of range, so I'm going to have to kind of pull in the enemies, but it definitely adds to something very weird. Honestly, it's kind of like playing the Renegade Crowns on the tabletop at the moment. Like, I'm using that as a pseudo-renegade Bretonnian force, but it's very different, and I think that's what makes this mod so interesting to play around. When you've got a faction that you know is hardwired to play a certain way, despite the fact that it wasn't that way originally, but it's been there for so long in that regard. So having to play it completely in a different styling with different war tactics, it boggles the mind, but it feels very, very good. I'll have a link to the mod in the description below. I'd say check it out. It's definitely very unique, and I feel like, a bunch of people are going to like this. Have a great day, everyone. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye.